All right, on the heels of a guilty verdict in the Derek Chauvin trial, Justice Department officials announced yesterday that there will be a federal probe into the policing practices of the Minneapolis Police Department. They are going to look at whether there was a pattern of unconstitutional or unlawful policing. And here to talk more about this topic is legal expert Craig Futterman. Hey, thank you so much for coming on. We do appreciate it.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, for years, you have led the Mandel Legal and Clinic Civil Rights Police Accountability Division, so this is right up your alley here. And for those who don't know it, it is one of the nation's leading law civil rights clinics focusing on issues of criminal justice. So I want to ask you, how does a process like this work when the feds go into a police department? What are they going to be looking for when they do their work?
Yeah, well, let me back this up and because we've talked about this case so much on the show over the last few weeks. And one of the things that we talked about that was different about this case was the number of police officers led by even Minneapolis's chief of police who lined up to testify against Derek Chauvin to break that code of silence. And that's so much of what these investigations, these DOJ investigations are about. And in the trial, though, the prosecutor and police did everything that they could to separate Derek Chauvin from Minneapolis police. The police witnesses lined up to say again and again, this isn't us, not who we are. But it's really important, and this is why the DOJ is coming to Minneapolis, is that we don't have a short memory because the case didn't start out that way. The police department released a very different message, a very different statement than the one that we know now. On the day that Derek Chauvin murdered George Floyd, the official statement read, "Man dies after a medical incident during a police interaction," carefully crafted to protect Chauvin and the other officers on the scene. Nothing to see here, nothing about Derek Chauvin's knee on his neck for those 9 minutes and 29 seconds.
Right.
And so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying you are right. Continue, please.
Yeah, well, and this goes to video, the segment you led up to, is that if it weren't for the extraordinary courage of a 17-year-old girl who stood up and took that video, that the police department would have treated George Floyd's murder just as business as usual. Man dies after a medical incident, circling the wagons. And that reminds me, and it takes me back to Officer Van Dyke's murder of 17-year-old Laquan McDonald right here in Chicago. Those 16 shots also caught on video, almost all of which while the boy lay helpless on the ground. Just like in Minneapolis, Chicago released a very similar official statement immediately after the murder to cover it up. Nothing about those 16 shots. And similarly, and here, but for the courage in Chicago of someone within law enforcement who had the courage to call me and tip me off, and then our more than year-long fight to release that video, to force the city to release that video, CPD would have been able to do the same thing to write Laquan's murder off as business as usual, just another of the nearly weekly instances in which a Black person died at the hands of Chicago police. Nothing to see here. You may remember, state's attorney never charged Jason Van Dyke for any of those 16 shots until the day that we forced that video to be released. And just like as in George Floyd, that video shocked the world, and that's really the reason why that universal condemnation, why there were the two rare, very real murder convictions that occurred in these cases. And that's what brought the U.S. Department of Justice first to Chicago, where it lives right now, or it's not here right now, concentrically in Chicago, though, and now to Minneapolis.
Well, you bring up some really good points, and it's important for journalists to also question these things as well. You can't just take these press releases on their face value. You have to do a little more digging and ask questions of the people that were out there. These videos are game changers, and that's why we need so many more municipalities to have these cameras, because they protect the officers as well as we are seeing, some of these being released right away. I want to ask you, though, in your opinion, with so much scrutiny on law enforcement and the policing practices, which, by the way, are approved by their administrators and their cities, these officers, they're facing so much scrutiny. Do you think in the future that it is going to be difficult to find people willing to step into that role, knowing that if they make a split-second decision that they could, in fact, be charged criminally, they're going to be vilified, they're going to be doxxed? How hard is it going to be to find people that want to take that job? Because I'll tell you what, I wouldn't want that job.
Well, my hope is precisely the opposite, and I'm going to challenge that split second thing, because good police officers, the people who we want to be police officers, understand that scrutiny comes with the job. They know that they are given an extraordinary amount of power that none of us have, the power to use force, the power even to kill, the power to take our freedom. And with that comes an accountability to the people, an accountability to the public. And none of us should want a police officer who thinks that I'm above the law. It doesn't come with that. But the other part that a police officer has the right to expect is that their department and their department is going to train and equip them to do the job and to bring a culture that is actually of service to the community, be a part of the community. And if the department, like the department both in Chicago and Minneapolis, has fallen down on its own officers, no people will want to become police officers. But my hope is that by a message of this isn't us. We don't want Derek Chauvins and Jason Van Dykes to be police officers. We want to empower all the people who want to serve, who want to protect, to know that, hey, they won't be poisoned by those folks like Jason Van Dyke, but they can feel secure that they'll be able to not just call me secretly and confidentially to say, hey, we need to do something about this, but they'll have the power to speak up with their own department.
You're right.
To make sure this is a department that actually serves the public.
You are absolutely right. Okay, well, we would love to keep talking to you, but we've got to move on to some other news this morning. I want to thank you for your perspective on this. Keep doing the good work out there that you're doing.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.